Shoo-be-doo-boo-doo-doo-doo-wah. No matter what in the sun, something can find. Mentos fresh and full of life. Mentos freshness, am I in focus? Mentos fresh and full of life. Hi, my name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and this is another Patreon Q&A session where I ask patrons to ask me questions, and I sit down and answer them. Let's get started. The first question comes from Juro, and he asks, there was a time when you didn't talk in your videos. How is the transition to what you do right now where you regularly talk and show your face? Why did you do it, and how did it feel in the beginning versus now? I'm pretty comfortable with it now. The most annoying thing is having to move the camera off the work table because it's sort of like embedded there, and then I have to like tear apart my room and set up this shot. And that's kind of a pain in the ass. Other than that, I don't mind putting my face on camera. I had already been doing music videos where I started to include my face in the process, and I don't know, it just sort of became like a snowball effect where I was more comfortable interacting with y'all as a person and not just a set of hands and funny text on screen. That said, when I did start doing all this stuff, I wasn't planning on showing my face at all. But that was also before I started diversifying into more educational content where I'm trying to actually explain things. You know, I was making more videos besides just the OP1 videos, and it got to the point where it was just worth finally talking or doing this, where I'm talking to you directly with my face. I guess what I'm trying to say is there was sort of a feedback loop between the positive reinforcement of the community surrounding my channel and my comfort level in showing more of myself to the world like this. And as the positive feedback increased, my comfort level in showing my face and talking like this increased too. So thanks, it feels good. Dan asks, what music do you listen to and what do you listen for to get inspired, to pump fresh blood into your own compositions? Related question, when you look to samples for inspiration, what do you listen to? That's a good question. I'm going to tackle the sampling thing first because I think it goes into the other question a little bit better. I love sampling. Sampling is like one of my favorite things to do, and I'll go through like these spurts where I'm just like crate digging like crazy, where I'm just like, okay, where can I find new stuff? YouTube has surprisingly become a really, really good place for that. You know, even though the quality level isn't super high from ripping stuff off of YouTube, places like Vinyl Frontier and a couple other channels, there's just tons of stuff on them to listen to and see if you want to make a sample from it. I have a video coming out about the MC707 from Roland. Actually, it might be out already. If it's out, look at the thing on the up here, and then click on that, where I rip directly from YouTube into the MC707, and it's just really, really fun. In terms of what I look for in a sample, with drums, I need clear hits or some kind of vibe. I mean, drum loop sampling isn't really that big a deal, but when it comes to melodic samples or vocal samples, the sample has to have like a really, really good vibe to it, like not positive vibe, but just a lot of vibe. And then there has to be sort of a way to think about like, how am I going to reconstitute this sample? Just dropping a sample directly into a piece of work isn't quite that interesting. I really like to be able to reconstitute it and chop it up and stuff like that. So I'm always listening for like points of inflection within the sample that lead to inspiration. In the case of the Roland MC707 sample, the piano thing that I grabbed, there was nice space between these piano hits that really lent itself well to reconstituting those pieces into different phrases by setting the transient point at the beginning of each piano hit. And I was able to take their chord progression, their melodic idea, and reapproach it how I saw fit. And you know, that's one of the cool things about sampling is like taking all that tension and release and musical complexity that somebody else has done and saying, okay, but what if it was like this? So I know that's hard to kind of define, but like I'm looking for vibe, I'm looking for inflection points within the sample that can be used as chops, and something that just when I listen to it, I'm like, yeah, that can be reconstituted into something cool. As for what I listen to, I go through spurts of listening to music, and sometimes it'll be like a day where like YouTube will suggest a music video to me that I've never seen before, and I'll just like go on a tangent listening to like all the related stuff. I've listened to so much music and have so much inspiration already inside my brain that I don't really need to go listen to a lot of other music. I'm still playing catch up with a lot of the stuff that I've already listened to and the ideas that it presents. And, you know, luckily I have the ability to recall a lot of that stuff when I'm sitting down to make music. And I feel like I have a lifetime of inspiration already in my head, and I tend to not go seeking out inspiration that much because I already have sort of a backlog, if that makes any sense. A Broken Robot asks, do you have suggestions for gear that have options for setting these? For instance, I understand the Deluge can constrain notes to a set key, and the Launchpad Pro has a scale mode you can enable. Yeah, those are two great pieces of gear that will reset the keyboard. The MC707 will do it. Ableton has a lot of MIDI tools that will allow you to constrain your playing to a certain key. And then there are like a ton of software instruments out there that are sort of like scale helpers or chord helpers that are actually pretty cool. So if you're looking to even use like a traditional keyboard like this to play in a particular key, you can use those plugins in your MIDI chain in your DAW to play sort of effortlessly in that key. The Launchpad Pro is definitely a top of the list recommendation for a piece of hardware that will interface both with external hardware and with Ableton or your DAW that will constrain certain things to key. Also has a chord mode, which is really, really cool. But I also urge you to experiment and try to learn the basics of those things, because while it's a nice thing, like especially with the Deluge playing live, to be able to just turn on the scale and just play the colored notes, having a good fundamental understanding of music theory, just like scales and chords, will get you really, really, really far. Jacob has a really good follow-up question to this. They ask, I guess this might be a weird one, but what keys do you find yourself most comfortable starting in, or that you tend to default to when you're playing around and trying to create? Oh man, we're gonna go over to the keyboard for this. Let me put the cans on.
Come on, team.
I'm a slut for C. But yeah, I start a lot of stuff in C. In fact, I have to work to not play in C because it's just really comfortable. But obviously, I will force myself into playing into other keys. And, one of the easiest ones is, using just black keys, which could be A flat major or minor. And it's A flat major, A flat minor, and you get access to all the black keys. And it just sounds pretty good off the bat. I learned to play in E a lot because guitars and basses generally are, tuned to E. So E is a key that I feel comfortable playing in. And then, we talked about sampling earlier, and one of the cool things about using samples as the basis for a track is that you don't always know what key the sample is going to be in when you start off. So if you use a sample in its bass key, unadulterated, then you're going to play along with that sample in whatever key the song was in. So without changing the timbre of it too much, by pitching it up and down, you got to learn other keys. So the keys I really don't like playing in are like anything around like F sharp or let's see what else. I guess C sharp is just close enough to C that it makes my brain hurt. But, we talked about chords and scales earlier, and practicing your chords and scales either through like, kind of boring practice or actually playing along with other people's music, which is one of the ways that I learned how to play. It'll give you the ability to look at a keyboard or whatever your input device of choice is and say, oh, okay, well, I guess this is in this key. So I know that the triad would be this, this, and this. Okay, I can start from there. And when you're picking apart other people's music to sort of either learn how it was made or to play along with it just as sort of a fun exercise, you want to be able to quickly identify the key and the progression. So understanding that something is in like C sharp major or C sharp minor, like where could it go? Okay, well, it sounds like we just changed the bass note to maybe a fourth or a fifth. Let me try that. And then, without much work, you can eventually start like playing along with other people and with other people's music. And that gives you the ability to like jam, which is really, really fun. Next question. Neandra asks, what do you use to make your music visualization videos? Got any tips? I have a whole video on that. It's kind of buried in my YouTube queue. I use After Effects. Go watch that video. Near the end, I show off the Trapwix Paradox music visualizer that I got off of Video Hive, Google Video Hive. It's like a subsidiary of Envato, which is a big template resource sort of website marketplace, and tons of little visualizers there for After Effects. Some of them are going to take like a really, really long time to render, even on a powerful machine like mine. So I do go through that in the video as well. So yeah, After Effects and a template that I customize. A mouth breather asks, what do you do to stay learning and inspired throughout the time you are working? What do you recommend for a learning practice discovery schedule or resources? A lot of people ask me about resources for these kinds of things. I don't have any. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's sort of just practice at this point. And unfortunately, those are the hardest things to tell people about. Like, oh, how do you do this thing? Well, I've done it for 10 years. I don't know anymore. Education can be tricky when you're trying to dig deep into an automatic process for yourself. In terms of what I do for staying engaged in learning and practicing, I'm thinking a lot of the time about how to make a new video for the channel. How can I use the tools that I have, or a new tool, in a way that educates and inspires the people that are watching the video? So that means I'm learning a lot of new gear and new techniques. And for me, that's worthwhile. That's enough to get me to do it. If I have a new piece of gear, like let's say the Pro 3, which I promise I will do a video on, for the first week or so, I've got the manual in front of me, and after dinner or in my spare time, I'm playing with it and trying to learn all the features, because there's a certain point after you've gotten comfortable with it where it just becomes like, okay, I know what I can do in that tool, and I feel comfortable with it. I'm always very, very interested in getting to that point with the tools that I have in the studio, because it means that either I can show them off to you, or I can know that I'm not going to waste time working on that piece of gear anymore. Same goes for software. If I've been asked to learn a piece of software to make presets or something like that, which actually I am doing sort of right now, it's the same feeling, I want to learn it as fast as possible. I want to get under the hood so I can move from that stage where I don't know what I'm doing to, okay, I can be creative with this. So to answer your question, my drive comes from that sort of feedback loop of wanting to learn so that I can get past the idea I don't know this thing, and then feeling inspired by it from a creative perspective. The way that I do that with work and everything, which, I'm not doing right now, I got fired a few weeks ago. So I have all the time, and it actually makes it even harder. When I was coming home from work and working on stuff only in that 2 hours or so after I'd done all my chores and eaten dinner, I kind of knew exactly how much I was going to be able to get done. And it was a very simple process of putting my head down and doing it. Now that I have all the time in the world, it's harder and harder for me to chop up my time and figure out what I'm doing with myself during the day. I'm still taking the same ideas into account, though, where I know that I have things I need to learn. I know that I have things I want to show you all. So I'm inspired to do that. And that's what drives me to make sure that I have the time carved out to do that. I don't have kids. I have a dog. And while he is a wonderful time sink in a lot of good ways, he doesn't take up anywhere near the energy that having children would. So for those of you that have that as part of your life, it's going to be a bit harder. And I don't really have any advice for you other than, if you are serious about things, and this goes for people without kids too, if you're serious about learning something or making something happen, you have to make the time. It doesn't just randomly happen. And as you get older, it's going to get harder and harder for you to find that time. So practice making the time, and practice in your brain that time being important to you, because the thing that you want to do should be important to you. I hope that answers your question. Aptix asks, except the teenage engineering things, what are your current favorites to play and make music? Great question. I've got the Electron, Digitact, and Digitone that are always there to pull out, and I know I'm always going to get something good out of them. I need to get back to them, but I'm stuck in a sort of a content creation schedule, so it's hard to just make time for these things. I have some new modular toys over here that I'm going to have a video about here pretty soon. I'm not making any songs with them, but there's 3 oscillators available between the Zero Coast and the Erica Synth Pico System 3. And I found over the course of the last week making a video about it that there's a lot of things I want to try with some unconventional approaches to triggering and modulating those. So I'm very excited. I know you already said besides the teenage engineering stuff, I just want to let you know that the OPZ is something I want to get back into making music with, but I'm having a lot of technical issues with it. It's just such a weirdly half-baked piece of gear in a lot of ways, and it kind of makes me sad. And then I really like to sit at my keyboard here with some beautiful sounding plugins like Noir here. Well, there's a really good cloud preset. Hold on a second. Where is it? I thought it was just called Cloud. Yeah, there we go. Whenever I just need some downtime, but I also want to do something, I'll have a few drinks and then come up here and just play ambient stuff. And it makes me happy. Music doesn't have to be always to an end. It can just be something that you experience. And that's one of the nice things about especially this type of music. For me, it's just sort of a meditative experience. So I definitely like to take some time every now and then and do that. Niels Riedman asks, how do you organize your video making, synth learning, music making, and practice? Do you use any tools, methods to not let one thing take over the other? Do you practice? If so, how? And doing all of this while still being able to watch movies, TV shows, and spend time with your significant other. So I answer this question mostly, but I'll get to the practice part. I practice when I have a particular goal in mind. So for instance, when the Deluge set I did for the Lo-Fi Festival was something that was on my horizon, I spent, I think, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks getting that together and practicing it. The OPZ live sets that I just recently released on like Bandcamp and SoundCloud and stuff, same deal. Like I spent like a week practicing them after they were all put together and also refining them. I don't practice keyboard. I just don't. I have what I need in terms of my keyboard skills, honestly. I mean, I'd love to be able to play better, but I don't have the patience for it. So I don't push myself past where I am as a regular practice thing, but I will push myself past that for a particular song or something like that if I need to. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I kind of answered this question already. You do have to actively spend time making time to do the things that you love, but you also can't let them overwhelm the rest of your life. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is letting go of a lot of anxiety around not being able to create or practice for a certain period of time. It's no bueno. It's just going to make things worse. Alexander Etten asks, aside from music, where else do you enjoy drawing inspiration from? In a similar vein, when did you go quite far outside your comfort zone and were surprised with results, music or otherwise? I think the Soft Music to Do Nothing 2 set was a kind of a big push outside my comfort zone, and it turned out really, really well. Life push outside comfort zone was definitely moving back to Seattle with my partner Brian, and I'm pleasantly surprised with that, despite how some things have turned out. Where do I go for inspiration otherwise? That's really hard to say. I get inspired by movie soundtracks a lot. Actually, no, that's not true. Mostly video game soundtracks, excuse me. Even though my work doesn't necessarily sound like video game stuff, I really, really think that especially the orchestral, ambient, and sound design work that's going into some of the more well-conceived video games is just wonderful. And I would love to be able to understand that a little bit more and maybe work in that field at some point. Fingers crossed. I have a application out with a particular company that I think would be a dream job, so we'll see how it goes. That was another thing that I pushed outside my comfort zone to do because I don't want to fuck it up. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Is this the last question? You might have a video for this, and I haven't found it yet, but I am curious how you handle the OP1 and OPZ when you bring them into Ableton to flesh them out more. Do you bring in separate tracks altogether or a different process completely? A mouth breather. I do have videos on this. In fact, I have a whole playlist on this in my Ableton walkthrough series. I have done a lot of videos where I talk about bringing the OP1 tracks into Ableton and what I do to them afterwards. Long story short, I mean, you should go watch the playlist. It's up here. The OP1 has 4 tape tracks, which are expressed as 4 mono AIF tracks when you mount the OP1 in disc mode. So those tape tracks that I record to when I'm making the OP1 videos, I'm careful about how I record. I try not to overdub too much. And then I bring those tracks into Ableton and go to town with them. So that's what happens with that. Go watch the Ableton walkthrough videos if that's something that you're interested in going into more depth with, because I made them exactly for the question that you've just asked. It's a little kangaroo on my Atomos Ninja, and I don't know what it means, so I'm going to finish this up before it stops recording. Thank you, patrons, for asking questions. Thank you for being patrons. If you'd like to be a patron and ask questions, check the link in the description, and maybe we'll see you on the Discord and have lovely chats. My Discord is full of lovely people who I am very, very happy to call online friends. Hi, all. Good to have you. Check links in the description for things that I've mentioned, etc., etc. Thank you for watching. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Beans Recording, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll just stare uncomfortably at the camera during the 20-second card screen here at the end. What do you think? Should I zoom in on myself? Hi. How you doing? That's cool. I'm making myself uncomfortable.